Let's get started with Microsoft Power Automate Desktop. If you haven't installed Microsoft Power Automate Desktop like I have here, click the link in the upper right corner that will take you to the installation process and then come back to the video. In case you have installed it, it will look like this. You might not see Copilot, that's because I have a US version. Don't worry, we will not use it here. We will create a new flow, and to create a new flow, you will click the new flow in the upper left corner. Call our flow something. I can call it Get Started, Power Automate Desktop, and we will just let these be. Then we will click Create, and a flow is getting created for us. We will start with web automation. Then we will do loops. We will take data from Excel. We will extract data from the web page over and over and write it back to Excel. I'll also show you how to manage email automation in Outlook, and we will do error handling and logging step by step. So please open up your own Power Automate Desktop and do this with me. Let me show you the web page. We will start here, and to get access to this web page, there's a link in the description below. So this is our demo web page today. First of all, we want Power Automate Desktop to open up the web page and fill in a username, a password, and click Login. Let's grab this URL up here. So I mark it and say Control. See, you probably have it in your clipboard already. Then I go to Power Automate Desktop. I like to divide my flows into subflows. We could build a flow here in the main where we just take actions in all the way down here. That will usually end in a long flow. So best practice is to divide it into subflows. We will use the actions from over here to the left. Let me just enlarge it a bit. So the intuition here is that we will drag and drop actions in from the left to our flow to automate things. Much more easy than to code, because these ones have already been made by Microsoft. That is code behind, but we will just see a few parameters that we need to fill in. Let's say I want to open up a browser. I can go into the browser automation category, and I can see I can open up a Microsoft Edge or a Chrome here. So let's start building that. We will create a subflow. We will have an initialization subflow where we will open up the programs that we will need today. Go up to Subflows and say New Subflow. Call this one Initialization and say Save. Now we have an initialization subflow. So here I will have a variable. A variable is a container for a value. So I can either go up here and search, or I could find a set variable down here in variables. When you get used to Power Automate Desktop, you will just use this search action because you will use the same 20 actions all the time. So don't worry if you think it's a little bit confusing now, completely understandable. I promise by the end of this guide, you will manage to do it yourself. So here I drag in a set variable. We can give our variable a name. So here I will call this one heatwise URL. Give it a meaningful name, not just new var 123, because then it will get confusing to figure out which one is which. And then in the value we paste in the URL. I had that in my clipboard. Then I can click Save. Then I want to open up the browser. I could again find it by doing this and finding in browser automation, or simply just search for a launch new. I can see 4 browser choices. When you install Power Automate Desktop, you also install the browser extensions. So pick one of the browsers that you install extensions for. Most likely just the browser that you use every day. I use Edge, but this guide you can use Chrome or Firefox. Just don't use Internet Explorer. That one is outdated. So I drag in Microsoft Edge. I drag it in below the set variable. Here you can see we have a few parameters. We want to launch a new instance. And then we want to pick a URL. I could, of course, have written it in here directly, or I could use the value of this variable. To say I want to use this variable, I can click this little X here. That's the variable picker. So I click this X, and I can double click the heatwise URL. Here I can say, in what state do I want this window to open? Normal, that will just be the last size you close down Edge, Or I can choose a maximized or minimized. It doesn't matter because Power Automate Desktop use selectors, that is direct addresses. It doesn't use image recognition. Per default, you can enable that, but I would recommend not to, unless it gets really complicated. Today, I will just choose maximize because then we can see what's going on. We can also see that this action produces a browser variable called browser. So we can later refer to this variable when we want to automate this particular window. We hit save here. If I clicked run here, that's how we can test the flow when we develop, then nothing will happen. And the intuition is that when a flow runs, it always goes to the main, regardless of what subflow I'm currently editing, and then it will perform the actions here. We don't have any actions in here, so it will not run the subflow. So we need to actively say to Power Automate Desktop that it needs to run this subflow. I will have a run subflow and drag it into the main. In the dropdown, I simply just take the initialization and hit save. So now when we start, it will perform this action, go over to initialization and do these two, and then it will come back to look for more actions below. We don't have any. So we can try it just to see that we can open up the correct browser. And that's it. We have completed the first step. Well done by you. Now we also want to, when we're done with this automation, I also want to close down this web page. The reason is that we want to clean up. Of course, we want to fill in actions in between, but let's just build the first and the last step in the browser automation. Leave at least one web page open. I think I have two now, so I don't need both of them. So just leave one of them because we will define UI elements. That is the elements that we want to click and interact with automatically. So here in Power Automate Desktop, I also want to create a subflow that will end it all. So we will call that subflow end. New subflow up here. Call it end and hit save. Here I will close the browser. But because I also want to see what has been going on in this automation, I will just have a warning to the user saying that, not a warning, maybe an info message will be a better word, but saying that the flow has ran successfully and the browser will now close down. So we will do that with a display message. A display message is a nice way to present the user for a message. So here we can give it a title. I will call it flow status. And then in the message to display, I will say something like your flow ran successfully. Click OK to close the browser. Something like that. I can also choose to enable this keep message box always on top. If I do that, this message box to the user will come out in front of all other applications. So useful when we want to inform the user about something. In the variables produced, we can see that there's a button pressed. This logs whatever the user presses in this window. We're not going to use this variable today, and best practice is again to disable it. I hope you do this with me. If the videos go too fast, simply just rewind or pause it. It's designed for that. But please follow all the steps. I promise you remember them much better than just passively watching. Of course, it's also okay if you do that. Then here we can close the web browser after this display message. So I'll find a close, and in the browser automation, we can see the close web browser. We drag that one in. This will just close the browser instance called browser. If we had multiple browser instances available, we can choose them here in this dropdown. I hit save. And again, we need to think about how will we get the end to run. And that's right, we need to run the subflow called end. We will do that after the initialization. So go up to actions and then find a run subflow and make it to run the end subflow. So now it will open the browser and close it. And yes, we will have a subflow in between where we do the web automation, the login part, extract things and all that, send emails and do error handling. Again, I prefer to test the automation step by step. So I want to see that I can actually open it. Here the message box is, you can see I can move it around, and when I click OK here, the browser closes. All good. We can now open a browser and close a browser. And you have also learned about subflows, a nice way to structure your flows. The reason why we want to do this is that it's much more clean. It's easier to see what's going on than just a long flow, but it also make possibility for reusability later on when we get a little bit more advanced. So this one, I prefer to teach you that from the very start. Now we want to do the web automation. We want to log into the web page. And first we need a username and a password for the page. You should of course store those carefully. So what I can do here is that I can go to initialization. I want to store the username in a variable. That's probably fine. And then we want to store the password in a little bit more secure way. So find a set variable and drag it in here. So first off, the username, we can call that Jensen.org. So that will be how we log in. And then we will create a subflow for us to log in. The reason why we put these variables in the initialization is that imagine that for some reason the username changes or we want to use another user, then it's really easy to always go into the initialization in the start and find our variables here so we can change them. One of the other benefits about variables. Then we will create a new subflow. And you could do that by doing this dropdown and a new subflow. And that's right, today we are going to repeat our actions a lot to teach you everything about Power Automate Desktop, how we get started, but also how to that you can make sure that you can remember all what we do today. So the subflow, we call that login, and I hit save. We can see here we have the main in the front, and then we have initialization and login. You could argue that the logic was that the login should come before the end. I can simply just drag with the mouse and drag the login over here. It doesn't matter anything in the logic, it's just for the looks. What I want to do here is to populate the user to the web page. So I find a populate text field on web page. Make sure you take the correct one in browser automation and not in UI automation. This one up here is for applications and we want to target in the browser. We drag it in. You can see here we work in the browser. Great. Now I want to create a UI element. I click this drop down, say add UI element, and then I have to open up the web page. Now you can see I can interact with the different elements on the web page. This is through the underlying HTML code. I want to interact with this field, so I go over here to the username, I press Ctrl on my keyboard, I click with the mouse, and we have created our first UI element. Then I can say, what do I want to fill in there? That's the text. We created a variable for that, that was the user. So I click this X here, the variable picker, double click the user, and it gets inserted here. Then we can say save. I also want to fill in the password. So I drag in another populate text field on web page. Similarly, we're still in the browser. I click the drop down. I say add UI element. And then I find the password field. Yeah, straightforward. So I press Ctrl, click there, and we have created our second element in Power Automate Desktop. And then I want to fill in the password. And a nice feature is that I can click this drop down here. We can see this direct encrypted text input. If I click here, it will only be visible the first time. After that, you cannot access it anymore. That's how we want to store the password. So here I can say, I can also show you the password. So here I can say, please give the video a thumbs up. That's the password. And yes, please give the video a thumbs up if you like it. That will really help me a lot. I can do this. Now we have a password, and I can find it here again. But once I click save, and let's say a colleague come back to this flow, we cannot access the password anymore. It's encrypted. So a nice way to store our password. So this was our login. I also want to click this little login button. And to do that, you will find a click link on web page and drag it in here. And you know the drill. We will find a UI element. So add UI element, find the login button here, press Control and click with your mouse. That's the third element, UI element today, and hit save. So that's the login procedure. We will only do that once. And let me go back to main. We will do that after we have initialized our variables, then open up the browser and before the end. So I simply just find a run subflow again, and I drag this one in. In the dropdown, I will find the login and hit save. So now we have a subflow more, and let's just test it again. That's a nice way to test that what we have built is actually working. So here you can see it types in the username, the password, and it should click login. Now we are in the search field. So now I want to automate this and click search. You can also see your flow ran successfully. We know that worked. And once I click OK here, the browser closes. I still have a browser window open so I can define all my UI elements. And just to show you that it actually doesn't matter what you click here and here. This is just a demo page. You can also just do this, but let's pretend it's a real page. This is a sub page on my homepage. You can also see it's called demo. This is for this course. So now we want to automate this search field. We want to do a web search, and we will just do a static search on one tenant ID, but of course we will connect it with the Excel later on in this lesson, one step at a time. We will create a new subflow, and this will be the search and extract data subflow. I'll say new subflow. I will call this search and extract data. I'll hit save. Again, we can drag it over here if we prefer that to have them in the correct order. First of all, let's just repeat, I want to do a search in this here. So I find a populate text field on web page. I drag that one in. We're still in the browser. We create another UI element, add UI element. Now you find this search field, press Control and click with your mouse. Let's just say 1205, that will be the ID. We will change this later. And then I hit save. I also want to click the search field. And to do so, and again, you can see these actions are getting repeated, we will find a click link on web page. So I drag that in here. We're in the browser still, and now I want to create another UI element. So I hit this, and that is the search button. So press Control, click with your mouse, and that's it. Now I go to the web page because I need to show Power Automate Desktop the following steps. So that's why I say 1205. Click search, and then I can show the following steps, which is clicking this open page. We will do that with another click link on web page. So I drag this one in, create another UI element, add UI element, find the open page button, press Control and click with my mouse. I hit save. And let us just do that here, because once we do that here, we will extract the data. We will also extract the data in a little while. We will just wait like 2 minutes. Once we have extracted the data, I will click this back to search. So let's build that in first, and we will do the extraction part in 2 minutes. Drag another click link on web page in the UI element, add UI element, pick back to search, press Control and choose the button. And I hit save. So now I will just see I can do a lookup and navigate back to the search. We also need to go into the main and have another run subflow here. So our main is now nice and clean. We will drag this one in and find the search and extract data. Hit save. Let's go see that we can actually do this, that we can log in. Again, we know that worked. And the Jensen org and the password. Please give this video a thumbs up. And here we will do a search. I will say search. I also see that I click and I click the back to search and my flow ran successfully. Bingo. Now we can add the data extraction. So I click OK here. And again, I can see I have a browser window open. Now I will extract the data of the second column. That's always how I want to do it. So to do so, I will find an extract data on web page. I'll put that into the search and extract data. And don't worry if you accidentally closes one of them, like doing this. You can always go to Subflows and double click one of the subflows. It appears again. So we want an extract data from web page. This is probably one of the most impressive Power Automate desktop features. Make sure you take the extract data from web page after web data extraction. I drag it in here. So to activate this, I just need to go to the web page where I want to extract the data. Then we can see a live web helper pops up. And again, I can just choose the data I want. Now I want to define the system. So I want to pick the first element of this. So I right click, extract element value and pick the first element. It's that easy here in Power Automate Desktop. Then the second one, I will right click, extract element value and pick the second value. Now because I defined the system, it says, okay, I know what the third value should be. Similarly, if we have 10 or 1,000 values. This is exactly what I want to extract because we will save this later on to Excel. I can click finish over here, and here you can see I can save it to an Excel or a variable. We most often want to use a variable because a variable we can quite easy transform that into another value. For example, split these three values into one. So we almost always go with a variable. Let's give it a better name. We learned that a best practice is not to use these default names. Let's call this latest month usage and hit save. So now I want to see when I run and inspect that I can actually extract the data. And let's talk a little bit about where should we pick that, because we just picked it in the end, but we want to do it before we go back to search. And it's very easy to drag actions around in Power Automate Desktop. I can just drag it up here. So that is the correct order. Don't worry, you will make a lot of mistakes here in Power Automate Desktop, like not in the correct order. That's completely normal. I also do that myself. So simply just follow along, and I promise you will learn Power Automate Desktop in very, very short time. And again, we just extract the data to a variable. So once we extract the data in 2 seconds, it will be in a variable. Our job is to make it fit so we can save it to Excel. Let's just click OK here. And so to find the extracted data, you can go over to the right in the variables. In case you don't see it, it looks like this probably. You can always go up to the X and hit it. These are the variables that gets created in the flow, and it shows the values of the last Power Automate Desktop run. So here I can double click the 3 rows and 1 columns, that is the latest month usage, and here we have the results. So what I want to do now is to read the Excel and then write these 3 guys back. This is a data table. It looks a lot like Excel, except that the first row is index 0, 1, 2. That is because it's programming, so it's usually 0 indexed. And we have 1 column. Let us do it one by one. Now I will read the Excel data. We had it on our desktop. Let me just show you how that looks. Here we will just minimize this. So I want to read the Excel data. So what I want to do is to have it here on my desktop. Sorry, that was not what I wanted. I want to go back to this one here, back to search, and download the Excel book. I want to download this into my desktop. So let's open the folder. I take a file, say Control-C, go to my desktop. I right click, say new folder, and I will call this one project. And then I will double click to open it, Control-V to paste it in. Then we have it gathered in a folder. It's not necessary to go on your desktop. I just prefer it when we develop because it's easy to find. Let me show you how that looks. So I can double click to open it, and I can choose to enable editing. Here we have what we want to do. We want to look up each of these tenant IDs, and first of all we want to make the kitchen, living room, and bathroom, we extracted that just before, into the correct cells over and over. Today I have 20 tenants, but you could have like 1,000 rows in your Excel that you want to iterate around. Let's do it one by one. So let us just click save here. I think I did a little bit of spacing here in the living room, and close it. What I want to do is again to either go here to my desktop or minimize and go to my desktop here. And I want to grab the path to this folder because we want to use it in Power Automate Desktop. I can right click and choose the copy as path in case you don't see this copy as path. That's because you have Windows 10, so you need to press Shift on your keyboard while you right click. Now it's in my clipboard, I can use it over in Power Automate Desktop. Let's save it in a variable in the initialization subflow. So I go here, and what we're doing now is just to read the Excel values, and then we will start to iterate through them. So have a set variable here. We will call this one project path. I will Control V the value in, and then remove these quotation marks. When we want to use this path later on in the Power Automate Desktop flow, Power Automate Desktop doesn't need those quotation marks. I can just hit save. Then we can launch the Excel. And to open up an Excel book, I find a launch Excel and I drag it in here. I can choose to open up a blank document, usually useful if we want to do some sort of a log, but I want to open up the following document. So here I can choose a path. I already have the first part of my path because that's the project folder. You can find it by going up here, say project path. Then I will do a backward slash, and the Excel file was called tenants.xlsx. I could of course have created a complete variable for this path here, so also included the tenants.xlsx, but because we also want to output to another book, I just choose this approach, but feel free to create a variable for the whole path as well. I can choose to make the instance visible. I will do it now, and it's also make it a little bit less likely that you hit an error here in the beginning, because if you already have the Excel book open, Power Automate Desktop will lock the Excel book, so you need to restart Excel, and that's a little bit of not complicated, but you just need to know how it is. So enabling this makes sure that we don't do this error. And down here I can see variables produced. It's called Excel instance. I hit save. Then we can read from this Excel. So I say read from Excel worksheet, drag it in after the launch. Here I work in the Excel instance. I can choose to retrieve the value of a single cell, but if I click this drop down, I can also see that I can choose all available values from worksheet. We pick that. Let's call this one tenants Excel data. So this one will be a data table that we read in. So the reason why we do that, we could create UI automation where we open up the Excel application and say, click this, click this. That will be very unstable and very slow. I'll do this, save. Whenever we read, open an Excel book and read it here, we also need to close Excel. Let's do that in the end. That's where we close programs, but also because later on we want to save some data. So here I find a close Excel, and let's drag it in the beginning. It's not super important where we are here. We will choose to do not save document in the beginning, but we will of course save the document a little bit later. Then I can hit save. Now I just want to run my flow again. I want to check that we can actually read our Excel data. After we've done the web automation, I can also see that the Excel closes. You can see it's down here in my taskbar. So this means that once we have done this search and navigated back, you will see the Excel closes. It will not do anything. It will just close if we haven't saved it, but that's fine. It works. You can also see that if this green check mark here in the lower left corner is green, that's check mark and no errors, then your flow ran successfully. Another thing down here, that's the run delay. There's currently a run delay of 100 milliseconds between each of these actions. The reason is why we develop what we do here. Then you want a little bit of delay so you can see what's going on, or you might do. We don't need it today, so simply just change this to 1. Your flow will run a little bit faster. Once we put this flow into production, you will see that there's no delay. So that is if we started from the overview or if we started from the Power Automate cloud. There's also no autosave here in Power Automate Desktop, so remember to hit save here and there. Of course, you can, when you close your flow, it will prompt you to save it, but imagine that you don't really discover it, you have it minimized and close your computer, all your work is done. So make sure that this is saved. Now, having read the Excel data, I can go over here to flow variables and see 21 rows and 6 columns. I can double click to open it. Here you can see something weird happen, and this is also something that you will see a lot in the beginning. You can see here it appears like we have the first row, here we have the headers, and the headers is just called column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the reason is, and I really hope you pay attention to this, if I go to initialization in the read from Excel worksheet, in the advanced here, we need to say first line of range contains column names, hit save, and let us just run it again. You will see it runs a little bit faster. And we will also see that we now have our data correctly read. Yes, you will test your flow a lot. That's actually nice because when we automate, we want to see that nothing goes wrong. Sometimes the web page can be in a different state. So we test it a lot while we develop, and that is actually nice. So once the flow is ready, we know it's properly tested. Now you can see I only have 20 rows over here, and if I double click it, you can see we have nice headers. Then I will start to iterate, because now I want to search for each one of these tenant IDs and write the data out to this column, and this column. Let's do that. So what I want to do here is to loop the Excel data first, and that is I build a subflow. I can reuse this because I want to do this search and extract over and over. I do that, I want to loop the Excel data, and then for each row in the Excel sheet, I want to perform this. So drag in for each. And for each, it iterates a collection, and our collection was called tenant Excel data. Here, double click that, and the current item, that is which row we have, is called current item. We can call this one current tenant. It's not super important, but it makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. You can also see that we write each letter in a variable name with capital. That's another best practice that we want to use. So always use the same structure. I say save. Right now, it will just iterate the 21s and do nothing because we need to put in the actions in between the for each and end. So what I want to do is to grab this up here. Now I want to, instead of just looking up a 1205 value, I want to use whatever is in the current tenant, that is the current row, in the tenant ID column. Let me just double click to open it here. So I want to say, go into, for each one of these rows, go into the tenant ID and pick this value up and do a search. Luckily, we did that very, very easily. So in the search and extract data, you can see in the populate text field on web page, I can double click to open it. Now we don't want to do a static search anymore. I want to go into the current row. That will be the current tenant, but this will get all the row from the Excel. Instead, I want to say, go into a specific cell. So I also specify the column. I do that by having a heart bracket, single quotation mark, and then I type in the column header like this, a single quotation mark, and a heart bracket. That's how we do it when we click save here. And if we get a syntax error, simply just rewind the video and do it after me. So that's it. Now we do searches for each one of these 20 rows. We will not go through all 20, but let's just see that it works. We only do the login once, and that's not how we structure it. So we only do the login once, and now we want to do multiple searches. So for example, here we have the first search. And then we want to see it navigate back and do the next search. That's it. So now we can repeat the process. This is where RPA in Power Automate Desktop gets smart. That is, we can do repeatedly searches. We open up the page, go back. Now I want to stop it, so let's just stop here. We will stop here or we will get an error. And here if we didn't enable that, the Excel book should be visible and we can just manually close it. Otherwise, this was here where Power Automate Desktop would have locked our Excel and we needed to restart, which was not preferable. So we can also see, let me do this, last month's usage. That was for the last one, 20, 95, 82. Now I want to save to Excel. So after we have done this search and extraction, still have a runtime error, that's fine, we closed it down manually. And then I want to create a new subflow. So I say new subflow, and here I say save to Excel. And that one will come after the search and extract data. Then I also want to say in the main, for each one of these searches, I will run the save to Excel. So we will save the data back over and over. Let's have a run subflow here. And we will run the save to Excel and hit save. Then I also want to say, while we want to write it back to Excel, then we just write back to a temporary instance. So this means that in the end, I want to, in the close Excel, double click to open it. I want to say save document as. Preferably, I want to save document as instead of save document because the save document will overwrite. We don't want that. So I just go down here and here I say, let's go into the project path. Now you can see it's nice that we use the variable for this. We reuse it. And let's call this one results.xlsx. So we change that. I know we haven't done anything. This will just be a blank book, but we will do it. Because when we have read it here, let me go to main. We're now iterating through a data table. This means that we need to say, for the first row in this data table, where do we want to put that in the Excel? So we need to make a connection. I know we read it from there, but there's no direct connection now. We will use a helping variable. And let me just show you what I want to accomplish here. So I go out to this project, the tenants XLSX. That is, for the first data table row, that will be Excel row 2. I want to write it back to there. So I create a helping variable in Power Automate Desktop. I will do that in the initialization. So have a set variable here. And this will start at 2. And then for each one of these iterations, I will add 1 to it. So here I will say row number equals 2. I'll say save. Then we can build the save to Excel. Before we do that, let's just talk a little bit about how we get the values out, because I want to find the values for each one of these in the last month usage. And that was what we found here when we extracted, and the data, you can see that over here to the right, it looks like this. So what I want to say to get the data out, and we know that the first one was that kitchen. Let's just do a search quick. We do a search, open page. So the first one is kitchen, then the second value is living room, and the third is bathroom. So this is kitchen, living room, and bathroom. To get this out of a data table, I could, of course, just say, grab it all in a table and send it to the user or save it to Excel. But we want to separate these 3 values so we can both save it in separate columns, but also send separate emails. Then I say, go into the last month's usage. And then I want to say in a data table, I can refer to the first column as column 0. It's 0 indexed. And it will be in the first row here. That's row 0. And then the column is column 0. So this will be 0.0. This will be 1.0 and 2.0. Yes, it's a little bit because it's 0 indexed and you first refer to the row and then the column. Don't worry, we will see that. I say save to Excel. Let's first drag the values out of the data table. We will split it. You don't have to do that, but I just prefer it so it makes it a little bit more easy and makes more sense here. I find a set variable. Let's call this one kitchen usage. like this. And we wanted to move into the click the X, latest month's usage, double click here. And then I wanted to say, well, to find the kitchen, that was 0.0. So do hard brackets, start 0, hard bracket end. This one here is the row and this one is the column. So far, so good. And because we want to reuse, now I want to do the living room and the bathroom. Let's just click here. You can copy and paste actions. Control C, Control V twice. Yes, we need to change these two, but it will be a little bit more easy. Double click it. This one, the first one here was the living room. So change this to living room usage, or maybe just this. Living room usage, I think it's with this. And then we say, well, now we're in the next row, so we'll change this to 1. This is actually our data table again from over here. We hit save. Double click the last one, and this is the bathroom, and I think this is in one word, like this. Bathroom usage, and this one was 2.0. So now we have these 3 guys into a variable. It will be a little bit more easier to write. We can do that with a write to Excel worksheet, and we drag that one in. We work in the Excel instance, and now we will write the 3 values in all together. We will create a data row. A data row is just an item in a data table actually also, but we can also do it here in Excel. We can take advantage of that. Then we just specified the first cell, and because Excel is also a table, Power Automate Desktop will know where to write it. And since we want to, let me just open up this Excel, we want to start our writing in the C column here. So I go back here, I say C. And where do I want to write it? Well, I want to write it into the row number. So first it will be 2. And after this, we will also add an increase variable. So we'll add 1 to this over and over. So make sure that this is getting written into the correct place. To create a data row, this will probably be the hardest part of this beginner's guide to Power Automate Desktop. This will just be, we will create a variable. So have a percentage sign. Then you will have a curly bracket and a hard bracket. Then we will have the 3 variables. So click the X here, find the kitchen usage. We will clean up in a little bit, so don't worry, it says invalid value. Then you will have a comma, find the living room usage, a comma. Then you will have the bathroom usage here, and then we will have an ending, a hard bracket, an ending curly brackets, and a percentage sign. Because these 3 here are variables, we have a code block where we have a percentage sign in the start and in the end. And yes, I know that this could be a little bit hard of this guide. So simply just do it after me. That is, we need to remove these here. We don't need it. Since it's a code block, it knows that these 3 are variables because we have a percentage sign here and here. When I click save here, I don't want to see any syntax error. We also need to increase the row number by 1 because now we have done a search. We have written into the row 2. We will increase it by 1 here. So find an increase variable and you will drag it in here. The variable name, that will be row number. We will just increase it by 1. So now we will write each one of these stats out, and I can click run here. So the best thing we can do here is just to see, of course we can log in, we know that, but we want to see that we can do 2 searches because then we know we're not stuck at least. We still need to check for the data in the Excel by the end of this, and I think it works. We can write the data back. We need to do 20 searches. So while we do that, yes, again, please give this video a thumbs up if it helped you. That will really help me a lot. You're also more than welcome to find me on LinkedIn. I blog a lot about automation, Power Automate Desktop, and AI. Feel free to follow me there. You can find the links actually on this page here, the Heatwise page. You can find that below, or they will also be in the video. We also have a Discord community called I Love Automation, where we help each other with solutions and we network around our careers. So here we can see that it just works over and over, and I find it very satisfying just to see that these things work. I also want to see that I can actually save it to results. If I stopped it now, the Excel data would not get saved. Of course, when we develop, let's say that this task was about 1,000 Excel rows, then I would probably just create a development test set with like 2 or 3 rows in, so I didn't have to loop like 1,000 Excel rows. This doesn't matter when we put this into production, because we will just have it run in the night, and instead of a human, there'll be no mistakes here. We can also check for errors. We will do that after this. We just need to see that we can now save it to Excel. So this is nice. We make no mistakes, and it's a lot faster than doing this manually. And of course, this is a little bit of a simplification here today. This is actually a real case. Søren, a nice person I know, have asked for this case and how to solve it, so this one shows it to him. It's nice to make simplifications of real-life use cases when we teach Power Automate Desktop, because it will be much more relatable. Of course, you will not have the exact same case, but it will look pretty much similar. You will do some lookups, you will extract data, you will read Excel. We will also send emails later here, and we will do error handling and logging. So a nice way to, if you can do one automation, you can do all the other ones. Of course, we will have a few things where we will have a little bit difficulty. That's what the community is for, the Isle of Automation Discord community. That's it. Our flow ran successfully. I can click OK. No errors. Nice. I can go to, let's just go to my desktop. I can see I now have the results, and if I double click to open it here, we have their usage stats written in. Now I want to do some error handling. Imagine that some of these tenants ID doesn't exist. Then the error, let me just show you what will happen. So let's say I just do 1111. I have a search. You can see no results found. If I don't take that into account to check for errors, then our flow will stop. We don't want that. So instead, let's just try to, we will do a few errors here, A, B, like this, and maybe 888 or something like this. So we have a few errors. We produced 4 errors here. We need to make sure that Power Automate Desktop takes that into account and can handle it. Remember to save it. Actually, this was in result. I should have actually have been over at tenants. So let me just do this, because the tenants is where it's read from. So let us open tenants here and Control V to paste it in. We pasted in our errors in the tenants, because the results will get overwritten over and over. So this makes no sense. So let's just do this. You don't have to delete the results, it will just get overridden. Let's also see that we can handle errors. So what I want to do here, the intuition is, let me go to Power Automate Desktop, in the search and extract data. So here I do a search and I click the button search. And that is, I do a search like this. And when I have clicked search, I could say, is this present? Because then I know it's a valid entry. If this is not present, well, then there's no valid entry. And that is the button open page. We can use that. So after this, we will check, is the open page present? If it is, right, continue. Otherwise, we will log an error. So what we will do here is to find an if web page contains, drag it in between the 2 click links. And by the way, this is all live coding. I hope you learn a lot to see how we can do this live instead of an edited one. We will have a few, like where I save the errors to the results and stuff like that. But now you can see the natural flow in developing. So this is an unedited version, which I think makes the most sense when you want to learn Power Automate Desktop. So here I want to say, does the web page contains an element? A UI element, we don't have to make one now. I just need to find a button open page here. If that exists, then fine. I want to click it here. That is, click the open page. I want to extract the data, and I want to go back to search. If it doesn't exist, then I can say, well, if this condition, that means here it's the true branch up here, then I can also do an else. This is like an if else from Excel if you have done those. I just pick an else and say, what do I want to do here? And that will be, if I have done this, well, then I will just do another search. I don't even have to go back. So let's log two variables. So here I want to have a status variable, which we will write back to Excel. So I have a set variable here in the end of the true branch. We will say status, and let's just do a simple one. So we will call it OK and hit save. I'll do another one down here because now we know that this tenant was not present in our heat-wise system. Then I will also call this status. Instead of writing it to reduce errors, I can click the X and find it up here. It's just a little bit more easy and we don't misspell. Here we can just say something like business. Feel free to write what you want to log. Business exception. Couldn't find tenant. And I say save. So now for each one of these entries, we have a status either OK or a business exception. That is, can bind the open page or not, that decides it. Then I want to go to the save to Excel, because here I only want to extract these three here and write the usages if we actually have a valid tenant. So we will do another check here. Here I will just say, I will have an if. And what I want to do here is in the conditional, in case you don't see the if, simply just click here and choose the regular if. Here. Save to Excel and do it in the beginning. Here I want to ask, click the X, is the status equal to OK? Because then I know I have a success. I can drag all of these in here, except the increase variable. I can either mark these and drag it in, but I can also just click the end so it turns a little bit more blue and drag it down here. So this is only if the status is equal OK. I also want to, regardless of what status message it is, I also want to write the status into column. Let us just see what column that is. In column F. Well, let's build that. That will come after this. So here you will find in write to Excel worksheet, similar to up here. The value to write, this will just be the status. So here I want to find the status. Now I will do a specified cell. This was column F, and again the row will vary where I'm at in the iteration. So again, just find the row number, double click it. That's it. I will click save now and also maybe choose to save the flow so we made sure that this works. So now we will start the flow in a little while. We will see that the error handling works, and I will also see that I can log the status. And let us just save here. I will stay with you for 2 iterations and then we will just fast forward. No reason to see it processes 20 rows again. So here we will do the first one. And I want to maybe go to the first arrow here and see, I think it was the second, we choose 111, search. Now we want to see that the flow is Power Automate Desktop is able to recover from this. Now you can see it done the next search. So it appears that we can handle the errors. We get no errors here. And AB22, that was also an error. And let's fast forward over this. That's it. Our flow ran successfully. Click OK. Now I want to check that it has logged the correct statuses here. There you go. We now have 4 business exceptions in the status. We also have a lot of OKs, and that is exactly where it couldn't find the tenants. Really nice. So far, so good. I also want to send an email to the tenants with their usage stats, but of course, only if we have available usage stats. In the real life, I will have a real email here, but because this is a demo, I don't have that, so I'll just write my own. Please make your own email here, not mine, because then I will receive a lot of emails each time you do this. So put in your own email here. I can just right click, remove hyperlink, then it will just be more easy to do this. All tenants today will have the same email, but imagine that these are 20 different emails. And again, maybe I should have not edited here in the results. We will go to the tenants and I will paste in the emails of these tenants. Save this and close the results. This will just get overwritten. Now we will send an Outlook email to each one of these tenants. So we need to open up an Outlook instance. I will do that here in the initialization. So I'll find a launch. I will do a launch new Outlook. Doesn't really matter where I do it. We open both in Excel and Microsoft Edge, and we open up an Outlook instance. I hit save. Let's create a new subflow for the actual email. So I go up to Subflows, new subflow, and here I want to call it something like send Outlook email and hit save. It's really that easy to do. We will do that after this save to Excel. Here we will send the Outlook email. So what do I need to do? Well, I go up to the actions and then I find a send email message through Outlook and drag it in. First, we need an account. This is most likely the email that you use on this computer. So mine is anders@andersjensen.org. We will send it from an account. We can also send it from a shared inbox. I just choose other mailbox. Here's an account. Who do I want to send it to? Well, now I will read the data from the current tenant. That was where we read it from the data table. This means that I can now find it here. So current tenant, and I can go into the email column. I do that by saying email. I do this because this is, sorry, we need an L. This will soon be a part of the for each loop, so I can refer to the current tenant. We can have a subject saying your heating usage stats. And now we will do a nice dynamic email. I don't have a name, but you could of course include that. Hi, the usage stats for, and let's just include the tenant ID. We found that in the Excel that we read. So this will also be a part of this current tenant. Because we're lazy, let's just mark it, Control C, Control V. Instead of email, I will have the tenant ID. And then I say R, colon, and then enter. I will have the kitchen. We want to find, I want to display the living room and the bathroom. Don't worry, we will fill stats in a little while, and then we can say kind regards the property management or something like that. To find the kitchen, we have a variable for that. We call that kitchen usage. So again, you just go to the variable picker, find the kitchen usage, the living room here, and the bathroom usage here. So now we have a dynamic email. I hit save. Then we just need to run this whenever we have a success. We have a variable for that. That was when the status was equal to OK. So I can go here and then I can have an if, find it in conditionals, drag it in below. Now I want to ask if the status is equal to OK, then I want to run the subflow called send Outlook email. I'll run that over and over. So here I will have a run subflow, and that will be the send Outlook email. Hit save. I don't want to send 20 emails now. A little bit of unnecessary. What I can do instead to introduce you for a breakpoint. I can hit a breakpoint here that will pause the flow. I can just click continue when I want that, but then we just have one row in the Excel, and then it will pause it, so we can just take two. I can hit run here. Let's see that we can actually send an email. So it will pause the flow once we have filled in the two here. You can also see Outlook opened in the taskbar. So now we've done a search, and when we go back, this will pause the flow in the Power Automate desktop. This is fine. We can see everything works. This means that if I go back here, you can see here it cannot find my Outlook account. So actually here it produces an error when it tried to send. That's what happens real time. And why is that? Well, let me just close these 4 reminders. And this is actually because this is a demo account. So you can see here the correct email was demo@Anders Jensen. Don't worry, you will do this a lot. I choose to include this in all my videos. These little small, you just know how to fix it. And let me just close it again. Let's say that we ran this and we experienced this error. We can see here that the subflow is sent Outlook email and the line was 1. And this wasn't planned, but it's nice to see that we can solve it. You can also see we have an error list here. If I click this here, we can also get more details. Sometimes you can get a little bit more information, or you can paste it into Stack Overflow, Google, or ChatGPT Copilot. But what I want to do is simply just, you can also see the red here. We can see we have an error here. And then this account was called demo.anders.andersjensen.org. So this is because at this machine, this is the email account. Let us go here and let us just close it again. And let's try to run it. So now I want to see that we can actually send an email. We could see the other things work. We knew that. The only step that we added was the send email. So I want to have that working. And usually when you make mistakes, it's just a little bit spelling mistake like this account. So now it should process, and now it should not produce an error. We can see that if I go back here, you can see it's paused. If I go to the main, you can see it's paused here. So now I want to see that we actually have sent this email. And again, let me close these reminders. You will see that it usually take anywhere between 5 and 10 seconds here. So let's just send and receive all folders. And if I want to go to send items, I can actually see here that we have sent it. Hi, the usage stats for 93884R. And yes, I sent it to myself again. I have it on another computer. So let's also, we could also fix that if we want. These are the demo emails. And to fix that, I simply just need to also, let me just close this. And this is, I think it's nice to see that is in the tenants. We will also send the emails. That will be the tenant email address. We will just do it like before. We will just do this and hit save. That's what tenants, not results this time. Let's do it once more. So it's usually how you develop. Do one step at a time here in Power Automate Desktop. That's how you get started. And also, if you're experienced, that's also how I would do it. You will experience these small mistakes. As long as you're able to recover, you don't need to do it as quickly as me, but you just need to be able to see, hey, what's going on here? Sometimes you want to post it on the Discord, the I Love Automation Discord. The link is in below. You want to post it there. Maybe you can get some help. We can see still that we have no errors this time. And if I go over to, I delete the reminders. If I go over here, now we are sent the usage stats. So here we have the usage stats for this. Nice. And I can choose to test the next one. I just take run. This will be an error. We don't hope that we send an email for this, because then our flow has failed. We didn't build the logic for that. This means that here we also paused. This is fine. Now I just don't, we paused here. Now I just don't want to see that we send an email. And what I can do here is just to take the third one. We will have a third working. Then we will see we get an email. So we now want to check that we don't get an email from the error one, and we get the email from the successful one. So now it pauses again. Fine, it's still okay here. And if I go over here, we can see we have the usage stats for the 9384. We don't have for the 111, but we have for the 8473. So you can see these two differs, and in the real world, these will have different emails. Now you want to take your next Power Automate Desktop step. You want to apply AI to your solutions. I created a complete beginner's guide to applying AI in Power Automate Desktop. It's right here.